Hey guys, and happy Rogue One week. As promised, this video is going to be my review of the Star Wars prequels. That's episodes 1, 2, and 3. The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith. So, what I'm going to be comparing specifically is what I thought of the prequels initially when I first saw them versus what I think of them now that I'm older and I understand a lot more of what's going on. Alright, so let's get down right to it. Okay, the first one, The Phantom Menace. Okay, a lot of people can probably agree with me on this, but the most annoying part of The Phantom Menace is probably Jar Jar Binks. I didn't really notice this a lot when I was younger because I was too focused on the awe, the wow of Star Wars as it is. And the opening sequence of Phantom Menace is great. You know, you get that whole negotiation table scene with Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan, and then that just shifts into a huge droid battle right there on one of the Trade Federation battleships. And then that transitions to Naboo, where we see Qui-Gon Jinn running through the forest, and then in comes, you know, the clumsy, annoying Jar Jar Binks. And not only does he help them for the sake of moving the plot forward, but he also comes along with them on their adventure to Tatooine, later Coruscant, and then back to Naboo. So really, his whole purpose there was sort of the comic relief. And then maybe once we got to Attack the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, George Lucas sort of sidelined him to the point where he's just like, okay, well, we know who his character is, but this is really all about Anakin's journey. And the thing that I like that the prequels do is that it builds on Anakin's relationships with others and himself, first as a young boy, then as an aspiring Padawan learner, and then finally as an up-and-coming Jedi master in Episode 3. And his whole reasons for turning to the dark side, people can, you know, sort of take Hayden Christensen's acting one way or another, but, you know, in all fairness, you know, it gets to that point where, you know, it's unbearable to hear, and I can understand where people are coming from, especially in Episode 2 with, you know, the love dialogue and some scenes in Episode 3, but eventually it all comes together when he finally becomes Darth Vader. And that is the biggest payoff for me, just to see him being called Darth Vader and the fact when he is actually emerged in the suit. And of course the ending of Episode 3, which sets up the whole points of the original trilogy, with him looking at the construction of the Death Star, which will lead eventually into Rogue One, and then of course Luke and Leia being separated to their respective planets, Leia on Alderaan and Luke on Tatooine. But the whole other point of the prequels that I really like is that it shows the grandeur of the Jedi Order. How the fact that all these Jedis are just so diverse, that they all come from different areas. Not all of them are just completely human like Obi-Wan appeared. Like Yoda back in the original trilogy was really our first sense of a diverse looking Jedi. But then we go in the prequel and we see all these different species of aliens that all have their own way of using the Force. And even in Episode 2, which when we see that giant Jedi battle scene before the clones storm, and even that is amazing to watch even now. I mean, I have to give George Lucas and his team props on that. That is still an amazing scene to watch and really is a badass thing even to this day. But aside from some of the dialogue, I mean, I really enjoyed the prequels. I mean, it was, for my generation specifically, the thing that got us back into Star Wars, that reinvigorated this whole idea of Star Wars. And then for the last 10 years or so, when there was no Star Wars, it just seemed like that was it. Back when I remember seeing Episode 3, I was about, let's say I'm maybe 10 years old, probably, when I had seen Episode 3 for the first time. If not a little bit older, maybe 11 or 12. It had that effect on me that it was probably going to be the last Star Wars film. And I think that it did its justice, that even though it was at the time considered to be the last Star Wars film, it did a great job of connecting and bringing together the original trilogy and the prequels together. And now going forward into the sequel trilogy, they've taken some of the ideas that the prequels had and then some of the ideas that the original trilogy had and binded them together. Now, there are other things that the prequels sort of, you know, go against certain people, like the whole midichlorians thing. I don't really mind it. It just puts more of a scientific explanation on the Star Wars ability of the Force, which I don't technically mind so much. But when it talks about, manipulating and bringing people back to life, that seems like an idea that could possibly be used for a sequel film, to explain maybe Supreme Leader Snoke, maybe if he does indeed turn out to be Darth Plagueis or anything like that. But at this point, we're still not sure of his identity. But getting back to the prequels, they are what they are. I mean, at this point, you either like them or you hate them. My favorite prequel to this day still remains to be Star Wars Episode 3 because of how it connects everything, like I said, back to the original trilogy, and that it brings together elements from the original trilogy that make this last version of the prequel so good. I mean, you have Darth Vader, you have more emphasis on Bail Organa's role as the eventually adoptive father that he will become for Princess Leia. And all that together becomes an amazing, amazing part of this Star Wars saga. So let me know what you guys thought about the Star Wars prequels. Let me know if you think you like the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy, or even if you don't like any of them and you just prefer the sequels series, that's fine.